On March 17, 1943, at the remote Reklin experimental airfield in Germany, test pilot Hans Werner Lerche opened a fresh page of his flight log. His hands shook slightly, not out of fear, but because the machine he was about to fly challenged every assumption the Luftwaffe had made about American aviation. Before him sat a captured Boeing B-17F FlyingFortress, repainted in German markings and coded DL+XC. To German intelligence officers, this aircraft had become far more than a trophy. It was the first intact, flyable example of America's most formidable heavy bomber, and it threatened to overturn years of German analysis. From the cockpit, Lerche studied an instrument panel far more sophisticated than expected. German analysts had insisted for years that the United States, distracted by a global war fought on two oceans, could not possibly mass-produce such complex machines. Yet this single bomber contained enough mechanical and structural innovation to suggest the Americans were doing precisely that. The B-17F variant carried 9.5 caliber Browning machine guns, each capable of firing hundreds of rounds per minute, arranged to create overlapping defensive arcs. Later models would expand this to 13 guns, turning the aircraft into a flying fortress in every sense. The story of how this bomber, nicknamed WolfHound by its American crew, arrived in German hands began months earlier.
The mission that went wrong. On December 12, 1942, First Lieutenant Paul Flickinger piloted B-17F 4124585 during a bombing raid against the Rouen-Sotteville marshalling yards in occupied France. His unit, the 303rd Bomb Group Hell's Angels, was still relatively new to combat and lacked extensive battle experience. That morning, the group dispatched 20 bombers to strike German logistics installations east of Paris. What began as a routine sortie quickly escalated. Fighters from several Luftwaffe units, Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s, attacked with unprecedented ferocity. Their goal was simple: shatter the tight defensive formation and isolate vulnerable bombers. WolfHound soon found itself the focus of repeated, coordinated attacks. Enemy gunfire ripped through its fuselage. One engine failed outright, another trailed smoke and rapidly lost power. As the bomber slowed and fell behind the formation, it became clear that attempting to cross the English Channel alone was suicidal. Neutral countries like Switzerland or Sweden lay impossibly far away. Flickinger made the only choice that offered a chance at survival: a forced landing on enemy-held soil. Through gaps in cloud and smoke, he spotted an open field near Melun, France. With remarkable skill, he brought the crippled 30-ton bomber down in a belly landing that slid through mud and grass before grinding to a halt. The crew climbed out, hands raised, expecting capture. What they did not expect was the extraordinary value of the intact bomber they had just delivered into German hands. A prize unlike any other. Most downed Allied aircraft arrived as twisted wreckage, useful only for scrap or superficial analysis. WolfHound, however, was nearly intact. Luftwaffe recovery teams descended on the bomber within hours, photographing every detail before souvenirs or sabotage could destroy evidence. German engineers quickly recognized what they had: the first flyable B-17F ever captured. Within 2 days, temporary repairs were complete. The American markings were painted over with Balkenkreuz crosses and a swastika on the tail. Two Bf-110 heavy fighters were assigned to escort the bomber to the Luftwaffe's premier test and evaluation center at Reklin, north of Berlin. Despite explicit warnings circulated to every flak battery and fighter unit along the flight path, some German units still fired on the aircraft, unable or unwilling to believe an American bomber in German colors was friendly. Minor damage was repaired on arrival.
For 3 months, the B-17 remained grounded as teams meticulously documented every system. The airframe's stressed skin aluminum construction astonished German engineers. The skin thickness, rivet patterns, alloy formulas, and structural bracing all reflected an industrial method built for mass production, not artisanal craftsmanship. German aircraft of the time often required highly trained workers to hand-fit parts. The B-17, by contrast, was clearly designed around standardized, interchangeable components, an approach that meant American factories could produce bombers by the hundreds each month. When analysts estimated U.S. production capacity based on what they saw, the numbers seemed impossible. Yet they would soon prove to be underestimations. The first German flights. On March 17, 1943, the bomber finally flew under German control. The honor went to test pilot Flugkapitän Hans Werner Lerche, who later became the Luftwaffe's most experienced evaluator of foreign aircraft. Without manuals, training, or an instructor, he relied solely on observation and methodical experimentation. The flight confirmed what American pilots had long claimed. Despite his size, the B-17 flew with remarkable stability. Even with 1 or 2 engines shut down, it remained controllable, something few German bombers could match. This resilience explained why so many damaged B-17s managed to limp home after missions. Over the following weeks, more pilots flew the aircraft through a variety of profiles: high-altitude tests above 25,000 feet, formation flying drills, engine synchronization exercises, and simulated evasive maneuvers. Each evaluation reinforced a growing realization within the Luftwaffe. American heavy bombers were not only well-armed, they were superbly engineered. Understanding the fortress's defenses. The most critical tests involved defensive armament. The B-17F carried 9 heavy machine guns, later increased to 13 in the G model. These weapons delivered extraordinary firepower compared with German bombers, many of which still relied on rifle-caliber guns. Luftwaffe fighter units needed to know where the B-17 was vulnerable, if anywhere. Simulated attack runs were staged using Bf-109s and FW-190s to identify blind spots and safe approach angles. Cameras recorded firing arcs and closure speeds. The findings were sobering. The standard German tactic, approaching directly from the rear, proved one of the most dangerous. The tail gunner alone controlled 2.5 caliber guns with excellent visibility and no blind spot within